We now want to take you to a conversation that I recently had with my boss, our wonderful chairman of the board, Ann Smead, as we talked about the year of 2020. It was a remarkable year.
I was in Quebec City, early March.
Yes.
And tromping around in the snow. And you called and we had this conversation and I said, well, I better get home.
And then by March 7, 8, we were making the decision to shut down the Villar Performing Arts Center for the rest of the season and then everything.
And didn't you get that feeling all that time though, that we were looking, we never thought that we'd be sitting here in December talking about this.
The organization did a great job of shutting everything down. But then we realized pretty quickly that although we thought we'd come out of it far sooner than we have, that's when we started looking pretty hard at how do we protect the organization like so many other organizations were doing.
And then all of a sudden it became very apparent that there was going to be what we believed at that time 4 levels of need. Mm-hmm. And we were going to create this fund and it was going to be divided equally. And I remember you started with, I think it was $250,000 from the board.
Yes.
And I sort of thought, oh, great. This is going to be dialing for dollars all weekend.
Yes.
And that turned out to be so extraordinary.
It was pretty clear that in certain areas of human service, we were not well equipped to deal with the volume of need that was coming. But the board and how they stepped up to support the idea, and then the financial generosity of you and the rest of the board, and then the community coming to bear.
Ultimately, in the end, did we have like 600 donors or?
Yeah, so far, I think to date, there's probably 630 donors that have contributed to the Vail Valley Foundation.
All the way
Community
from
Fund.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars to
yes,
$20.
Although the board and our donor base were incredibly generous. Steve and Amy Coyer definitely stepped forward with the lead gift. Steve Coyer described it as a nice dinner that they had.
Yeah, you should tell that story.
Nice bottle of wine, and then they thought it was going to be about $20,000, and by the end of the bottle of wine, they added a zero.
Yep.
And so their lead gift was $200,000, which inspired so many others to step forward as part of the match, and then incredible support within what, 12 days and
12 days we were at 1.2 million.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think one of the best ideas that I believe you had, if I recall, was to create a steering committee of community members as well as board members that would deal with dispensing the money.
Right.
And the next best idea, two really things that made it so successful in my mind, that was one, and the other one was to find organizations to support and not giving money directly to individuals. We knew we had a huge need in the community, but we couldn't quite put our finger on exactly how much was going to be needed where. And so I think keeping that pot of money together and distributing it as the need rolled through was probably one of the best things that we did. Because as it's turned out, at least to date, the majority of the money has gone for housing assistance. You know, Mike, we've just gotten another very large donation that.
Yes, the Katz Amsterdam Foundation, which is Rob Katz and his wife, Alana Amsterdam, they have just made an amazing gift to the community fund of $200,000.
The reason the Vail Valley Foundation was the organization to lead this charge and get the community fund going, I think, is because of Mike's vision and leadership. And I really believe that.
Well, thanks, Ann. There was a lot of people who came together. We had a board exec committee meeting. It was an hour after that board exec committee meeting, Johannes Fessler asked if he could talk with you and myself. I remember him saying, Mike, you get an A+ for shutting everything down. Good job. But you might, at the moment, you get a D- for what happens come June. Like, how do we look beyond, call it the current lockdown that we're in? How do we look at saving summer? Or how do we look at reopening this community, and in what way? Yeah. And at that point, it was not a long conversation, but you and I, within a few days, came up with the creation of a steering committee. This group became really the boots on the ground that could help the decision makers in public health understand what kind of public health orders should we install.
In other words, not let's just shut down, roll up the carpet, forget the whole deal. We'll close, we'll reopen in 2021. And we said, no, we can't do that. We have to say, well, how can this piece of business in our community, the real estate, how can they still show houses? Yeah. What protocol can we have to make that happen?
And how fortunate were we that the county, both the county government as well as public health, were willing to listen. As they were looking at the economy reopening, they were willing to take advice, direction, suggestion from the steering committee, from all these business segments that built protocols and standard operating procedures that could work.
Because we were such a congealed community, if you will.
Well ahead of any of the other counties in the state of Colorado in our ability to open responsibly with very clear protocols in place.
If we think about all this going forward, the to-do list for 2021 and 22 is pretty long. The things we'd like to accomplish.
Step one is, I think it's really, really important that we are ready. It will be the organization needs to remain optimistic but cautious, but we need to be able to be ready when the world does open back up. Because it's not a light switch. So much of who we are and what we do, it's far easier to just turn it off than to turn it back on and restart the engine of everything.
From what you just said, my sense is you're going to say, we're going for it. We will have GoPro games next year. Yeah. And do you feel that way about the Bravo and Bravo Vail and Dance and the amphitheater this summer as well?
There's no science behind this, but generally what we've been discussing is we should plan for about 2/3 of normal.
But I bet we can run power hours in all full steam.
Yeah, and that's a real blessing.
Yeah, it sure is.
The education will probably be the first area to be able to get back to just operating to normal levels, and the youth and families.
That has such a huge impact on our families.
Oh, yeah.
Because mom and dad can work. The kids have a safe place to be in the summer with Power Hours summer programs.
It'll be really important to lift these kids up again academically, get them back to their normal grade levels.
So, dare I ask how we're going to accomplish that?
Our normal tenacity.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, we're fortunate. We have amazing supporters that believe in Youth Power 365.
All of our supporters are tremendous, and all you have to do is lay the need out. And I think also, though, the morphing of the organization is something I'm very proud of as I look back on the last 40 years, because you could see the organization changing over time. And it was driven by the needs of this community.
Our organization constantly needs to ask the question, what does this community need today? And what is it going to need in a few years? And then adjusting the organization appropriately to go address that.
I think seeing the opportunity to raise this community up in all aspects of the quality of life is a very important function of the organization.
Right.